Hello, I'm Maziao, and this is my book review of Lazarus by Sarah Cawkwell. It is the only canonical book in the dystopian age, even though there is 2 more novels and a graphic novel available to buy. This one is actually canonical. First things first, I wanted to discuss Sarah Cawkwell. I first heard of her via the Valkyria book for Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and she pretty much ingrained into me my love for that character. I do love Valkyria. She is the reason I will be doing Khorne for Warhammer the Old World. She's the only model in my so-called pile of shame, because I'm waiting for Warhammer the Old World to drop just so I can paint her and build her for that. It is the only reason I have her, and she is in my thoughts. And that's it. And this is the book Valkyria that got me into this character. I think she's a fantastic character, and Sarah Cawkwell did a great job. Anyway, but we're here to talk about Lazarus and the Wild West Exodus. Right, for story beats, I'll only be going up to the first half of the book, so there are some minor spoilers, nothing major, but something that gives you an idea of what the story's about and what it's like. So, the main part of the story, because it's split up, is about Willis Shaw and Doc Holliday. Yes, that Doc Holliday. Willis Shaw is a major in the Union Army, and I tell you what, I swear to God, this is one of my favourite bits of this book, is she reminds me of characters of the 80s hot action films, such as Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. Now, let me explain why. She is a very strong woman. She is very much a leader. She is also feminine. She isn't scared to show her feminine side, and this is what makes her great. She's a fantastic character. She's well written, and she reminds me of the characters of like Ellen Ripley. But when it's needed to have that female touch, that gentler side, she's not afraid to use it. But when it's time to be that stern leader who needs to do what needs to be done, she can do that too. A fantastic. If you're into films like Aliens and Terminator 2. Yeah, honestly, you will probably enjoy Willis Shaw. She's fantastic for that. And being a stern and very, she's a drama, and Doc Holliday's the more comic. I wouldn't say comic relief. He's not a comic relief. He's a very serious character, but he is there to lighten the story. He isn't always serious, but he is when he has to be, and he's also there for a lot of relief. He's a fantastically written character, and he really does. You do feel for both of them. Now, part of the story is that they did actually have a relationship way back when, and then, of course, Doc Holliday gets his tuberculosis diagnosis, and he decides to leave because he doesn't want to die, or let Willis Shaw, Major Shaw, suffer because he died, and he knows it's his fault. He didn't get diagnosed sooner, and so he moves out to Arizona to do what he believes helps clear his lungs. And of course, with the good guys, you have the villains of the piece. These are Annabelle Hamilton and Ross Mackey, or Mackay. I keep using it as Mackay because that's how it's spelled, but it's probably Mackey. These are villains of the piece, and these are part of the Enlightened. Now, the Enlightened are scientists, and their plan is, Annabelle's plan in particular, is to raise the dead, Lazarus, to create an army for the Confederacy, so the South will rise again. So it's basically the story of people trying to come back. And she creates this drug called Lazarus, and this basically puts people into stupor. But it can also reanimate the dead, or nearly dead. Like I said, I'm going to really try and not have spoilers in this story, because it's worth reading. It's a fantastically fun book. It's not something you would take too seriously, as it is a wargaming book. It's based on there, but it's got a lot into it, and it's very interesting, and it's enjoyable. And there are some other bits of story too. One is Stone Fur and him becoming a new spirit priest for the warrior nation, which are the Native Americans of the Wild West Exodus setting. And he is very mystical, and you see him use his powers. And he also leads a fight with the undead because of the death of his mentor and his adoptive father, Bearclaw. I hope I got that right. Bearclaw. Anyway, so basically his mentor's body got stolen, and so he leads a fight. And you see him, again, it's fantastically well written, how we see him coping with the death of his mentor, assuming his mentor's role, and how he has to put his grief on hold at times, and when further things happen, how he has to control it. And he's a powerful person. He's very much in tune with great spirit, and he is. It's just I feel Stonefur is probably one of my favourite characters in it. Well, to be fair, there's probably a slight bias in that because I am a big fan of Warrior Nation. And finally, the other character is Mary LeVoux, the voodoo queen from New Orleans. Now, she's also well written, and she is basically she's a part of the understanding of the more mystical time, and again showing prophecy. But a lot of her stuff happens after the second half of the book, so I'm not going to go into there, just going to mention she's in it, and so's the Hex. Now, why is these things important? Why have I mentioned the Union, the Enlightened, and the Hex, and of course the Warrior Nations? Because this is one of the good things that Lazarus does. It sets up a lot of the factions within the Wild West Exodus. So if you're new to the game, and you want to know what each faction is like, Sarah Cawkwell has done a good job with that. He's shown a good job of what the Enlightened's like, and every so often they name drop certain units which you can buy, like Ross Mackey explains how he doesn't like the Hellions because they freak him out, and that is a unit, of course, in the game. And we've got the Union and the Lawmen with Doc Holliday and Willis Shaw, and it shows you how not only how do they work in the setting, how they also can be at odds with each other. Lawmen are not a big fan of the Union coming in and, treading on their toes. So cooperation is rarely a thing that happens, but when it does, it's kind of grating. And adding to that, of course, you have their previous relationship. So once again, this is why I like it. This is probably one of my favourite books ever. Now, we got over. What's the problem? So, one of my issues with this, because it is a good book, and it is worth reading, right? Honestly, it's worth picking up today. One of my big problems with it is the lack of chapters, and that is solely to do with my own autism. And yeah, I'm not using that as an excuse, but I've got to explain this that way. When I read a book, I paint when I read. And what I'll do is I'll paint a certain colour, like I'll do a base coat, and then I'll read a chapter. And by the time I finish the chapter, I can go on and finish, do the next colour, like that. And chapters are a good way of doing it. But lack of chapters I didn't like it because I didn't quite know where I could stop. But that's also kind of a good thing because I wanted to continue reading at the same time. I wanted to know what was happening. She would finish the part on Willis Shaw and Doc Holliday, and then she would go on to Stonefur. Now, just to show you how well this is written up, and how, like I said, it very much reminds me of the 1980s action films, is the start of the book. I'm going to completely ruin the first chapter. You get the setting of Providence. Providence is a small up-and-coming town, and it is run pretty much by a sawmill. And then you get to learn about certain characters. Reese being the Howell Reese. Honestly, I don't know how to pronounce it. I was pronounced it Howell Reese, alright? Is the runner, and he's leading going to mayor, and he's talking to an enlightened woman, which one of the member of the enlightened is a woman, and we find out later it's Annabelle Hamilton, and she's saying that she needs more bodies for her, and she doesn't say why, just to help her out in the mine. Then a fire starts in Providence. The fire gets put out, and then the engine and the generator within the sawmill blows up, and this is what causes Willis Shaw to go to Providence and Doc Holliday as well, because they're both there investigating what happened. So that's the start. But the way it's done, you learn about several little characters who don't really make much of an impact, but it builds up the setting of the town, and this is what makes it good. Like there is an artist at the start because he's painting the sunset, the Arizona sunset, and explains what and how he gets upset that he couldn't be able to paint this perfect sunset. And we see the painting come up again as, both Miss Shaw and Doc Holliday are exploring the town. And it's this nice little bit of world building where that the artist is so, I forgot the name, but it's completely irrelevant to the story, but it built up the town of Providence and how it was booming because not everyone had to work in what the sawmill or the mine or what would be standard jobs. He was painting as a job. It was a job, which means the town was booming and that the town could, actually afford things that were not complete necessities, such as a painting. We also learned that it was booming enough that the Enlightened had given them an RJ generator, allowing them to have street lights. And this start of the book is how she has done a fantastic job with the setting of Wild West Exodus, the Lazarus. So, absolutely, if you find this book, pick it up, get it. It's fantastic. It's a fun book. I enjoyed it. Doc Hardy is one of my favourite characters. Really sure I'm just going to add her to my Union Army now, just because of how good she is in this book. If you're into steampunk, it's a definite buy. If you're into Wild West, it's a good buy. A good purchase, not a good buy. And finally, if you're looking at Wild West Exodus for lore setting, it's well worth reading just to look into that as well. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review of Lazarus. I enjoyed it. I think it's a fantastic book. I really enjoyed it. It's basically a strong book and really worth it. I really want to see more. I really do. I want to see more what she does with the Wild West Exodus setting, even the dystopian age setting. Wayland Shaw needs a lot more books. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Links down below for Wayland Games, who, yeah, of course, they do sell the book. I think it's the only place you can buy it at the moment, and it's well worth picking up. It's £9. Thank you very much. And of course, there is Forbidden Planet for comics, and my books, my comics, my merchandise, and of course Patreon. But as always, treat yourself to something nice. I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.